Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nurdiana Qamarina Binti Ariffin. So today I'm gonna present about data bicycle inventory.
So question 1 is chapter 2. A. Compute the smallest amount of purchase cost. I use minimum function then data range for purchase cost. Next is largest amount of selling price. I use maximum function then data range for selling price. Total amount of selling price for all product. I use sum and then data range for selling price. Fourth, number of bicycle inventory. I use count then data range for inventory on hand. Fifth is average inventory on hand. I use average function then data range for inventory on hand. Sixth is numbers purchase cost less than 100. Then I use COUNTIF data range for purchase cost and I add less than 100. Lastly is number of supplier. Supply bicycle for children. I use COUNTIF and then data range for supplier. And then I add children for the specific questions. Next is B, classifying the amount of selling price as expensive if the selling price is more than 150. So I use if, count if, and I put more than 150 to get expensive. Then cheaper if the selling price is less than 150. I use if, then I put less than 150 to get the cheaper. So C, find the customer ID. 20 to look up the first product category. I use VLOOKUP and then the data range for product category. Next is product name. I also use VLOOKUP and data range for product name. And the last one is supplier and I used VLOOKUP too. Question 2, chapter 3, pivot table. I use first of all I'm gonna to select all the data on the table. Then I go to the insert and pivot table. After that I put value as quantity of hand, and for the rows I put the categories and product name, and then I put a filter which is a supplier to make easy for customer to look what supplier they want. And then for the graph I select go to the insert, then I go to the recommend chart, then quite the pivot chart. Question 3 is chapter 4. So A, compute mean. I use average and data range for purchase cost, and then for selling price I use average 2 and data range for selling price. Next is variance. I use variance and data range for purchase cost, then variance 2 for selling price. Then is standard deviation and data range for purchase cost, and the answer selling price also I use standard deviation, and then I put the data range for selling price. Next is coefficient variation. I use for function standard deviation, the data for purchase cost, then I divided by average for purchase cost. Then for answer selling price, I'm use standard deviation for data range for selling price, then divided by average price range and times for 100. B, based on coefficient variation, purchase cost has the greatest depreciation while selling price has least depreciation. C, compute coefficient SKEWNESS. I'm use the skew function and data range for all the data. The next is the coefficient of kurtosis. I'm use purchase cost, and then the comment for purchase cost is comparatively symmetry and positive skewed to the right, and for selling price also the comment is the same. And then the comment for coefficient kurtosis for purchase cost is data distribution is flatter with a wide degree of dispersion. It's same for selling price too. So D, compute the z-score for total selling price and determine the outlier. First of all, I'm calculate the mean, the average and data range, and then standard deviation. I'm use standard deviation function and selling price data range. After that, calculate the z-score main one, which is the formula is the total selling price minus with mean and divide the standard deviation. And then after that, I'm just write it down. So z-score formula, I'm use a function standardized, and then use total selling price times mean times standard deviation. After that, I'm just write it down to get the other answer. Then for the outlier, I use if function. Then if total selling price, if z-score for each column more than 3 is called yes, or if otherwise is no, then after that I just write it down to get the other answer. Next is E, plot the z-score graph for the square footage. I'm just select all the data for z-score at the table, and then I go to the insert and cutter chart. So yeah. The last question, which is F for descriptive statistic. First of all, I go to the data and then click the data analysis, then click the descriptive statistic, click OK. Then for input range, I'm select the data range for purchase cost, selling price, quantity on hand, and total selling price. After that, I go to new worksheet. I rename it as descriptive statistical, and then I click summary statistic and then click OK. And then I got this answer.